Good morning, everyone. I've been assigned to create 15 minutes of a description of chaos, of a life that's out of whack. I'm not going to provide any answers. They're going to come later. I just want to talk, which I'm not really used to doing, but I want to do the best I can, produce a picture of a man in the Bible who was totally, absolutely living in spiritual, emotional, psychological chaos. He's a prototype, really, of the things that can happen to us if we're not careful. His name is King Saul. And nobody in the Bible really had a better beginning when you think of it than Saul, or could have a more favorable, auspicious debut onto the pages of the Bible than Saul from the tribe of Benjamin. Real tall guy. And as we look at his story, we find out that long before he's seen in the background in the famous picture when David kills Goliath. Do you know who the king is when David kills Goliath? It's King Saul, the first king of Israel. As you follow his life, you see that right from the very beginning, he had no sense of thanksgiving for what God had done for him. And that's the beginning of all chaos in our lives. No sense of thanksgiving. Here God was looking for him. He wasn't looking for God. God sent a prophet to find him, to make him the first king of Israel. And nowhere through the whole story do you ever find Saul worshiping, thanking God, praising God, appreciating what God has done. And that's how it can be with us. We just get into a mentality of I'm owed everything and I'm only focusing on problems. I'm not focusing on the good things that God has done. And that's how Saul begins. Really, when you follow his whole life through, he's not a thankful person. He's not a worshiper. David's a worshiper. Saul is just, what's my next problem? Never taking time to thank God. And think of all the things God has done for us here. Yeah, but I got some problems today. Don't we all have some problems? But how about the good things that God has done for us? Well, Saul doesn't appreciate that. On top of that, what brings about chaos in his life is that Saul has no sense of his destiny or the plan that God has for his life. You don't find it. You find David throughout his reign as king, and before that, inquiring of the Lord, trying to figure out, God, what's your plan for my life? Saul, never. Saul is just living from moment to moment with no sense of what's the big picture? What's God's plan for my life? And that, of course, a lack of thanksgiving and no sense of destiny, no sense of why God made him king, brought him into this position of leadership, that's going to make for chaos. It's going to make for real chaos. But because this vertical relationship is skewed between King Saul and God, he's not thankful. He has no sense of the big picture and the plan. And that's the way we can be. Just living from moment to moment by our senses with no spiritual vision of why am I here and what's God's plan for my life. But then the third thing comes, and that's so sad, is that Saul ends up, because his vertical is off, he ends up caring more about what people think than what God thinks. In the middle of the story of Saul, he blows it. He makes a mistake. He doesn't obey God. God tells him to do something. He doesn't do it. Well, of course not. He's not thankful. He doesn't have an idea of the big picture. So he disobeys God. And the prophet Samuel comes to correct him. And he makes an excuse. No, you don't understand. You don't understand. He doesn't man up and say, you know what? I made a mistake. I blew it. But what really bothers him is he grabs a hold of Samuel and says, when we go out and walk in front of the people, please walk with me so everybody will think I'm okay. Isn't that amazing? He's missing out with God, but he wants to look good in front of the people. Come on, Samuel, walk out with me because it's going to look real bad. I walk out there, everyone's going to say, why isn't the king with the prophet? So it's going from bad to worse. Chaos. No sense of thanksgiving. No sense of destiny, of the plan of God on his life. And now the way we end up, this is real chaos. You care more what people think, how you look, how you act, who you fit in with, and you have no thought hardly for Almighty God. This is the way Saul is living. What God thinks, what God approves, who cares? I got to look good in front of the people. Now that's chaos. But it gets worse. David comes along in his life and saves his bacon when it comes to the war against the Philistines. You remember what David did as a kid, stepped in there and really helped Saul. Do you think Saul appreciated it? Never. You will not find him saying thank you at all. In fact, here's another sign of spiritual chaos in our lives. The people we should be thankful for, we're jealous of. Because the Bible tells us that Saul looked at David and instead of saying, oh God, thank you for sending this kid to take out that giant. No. He says, that guy's dangerous to my position of leadership. And he gets jealous of a kid who loves him and who cares about him and would do anything for him. Saul gets so crazy that when David's playing the harp for him one day, he tries to kill him by throwing a spear at him. But this is what happens when chaos gets into our lives. We're not thankful. We have no sense of the big picture. We care more what people think than what God thinks. And now, instead of appreciating people, we can't get horizontally right because vertically we're off. And now there's total chaos. We're jealous of people we should be thankful for. But just two more things to talk about chaos before you see this video, which is going to help you and help you prepare you for the whole day and what's going to happen here. At the end of his life, many things I'm leaving out, but just if you get a chance, just read in Samuel, read the story of Saul. It's a tragedy. At the end of his life, instead of going to God to get an answer because he's in a dilemma, do you know who he goes to and consults? A witch. That reminds me that when chaos comes into our lives, we end up doing things and going places we never ever dreamed we would do. Isn't that something about sin? Because of course at the bottom of this story, at the bottom of all chaos is sin. When you and I, and we've all known it, I've known it, haven't you known it in your life? When sin gets a hold of us, and we lose our way, we end up doing things, going places that we thought. Do you think when Saul was named by the prophet to be the first king of Israel, do you think if someone would have said to him, you see this man now who seems to be, like the perfect picture of a king, and God anoints him through the prophet, do you think one day he's going to go see a witch to find out what to do? And he was the one who had banned all the witches in a better day. He had banned all the witches and all the soothsayers and all the sorcerers from the land of Israel. And now he's going to see one. Is that chaos? Saul was the king who said, get all these witches and soothsayers out of the land. And they got them all out. So when he went to see the witch, he had to put on a disguise. You want to talk about chaos? You're the king of Israel who banned all the witches. And now you got a disguise on, consulting the very witch that you tried to kick out of the land. Now that's chaos. You want to talk about chaos? You want to talk about double-minded in all our ways? Oh my goodness. But you know the saddest thing, gentlemen, of that whole story is to me, the one I've always thought about the most? We all know about King Saul, don't we? But the saddest part is, when he dies, he takes his own family down with him. I've always believed, and I've talked with other ministers about the sorry story of Jonathan. You know, Jonathan was his son. Do you know whose best friend Jonathan was? Who is Jonathan the best friend of? David. But did you know that Jonathan died in a battle he should have never fought? But you know why he died in that battle? because he stuck with his father who was living in total chaos. I myself, I've always believed that Jonathan should have just split and said, you know what? God is with David, and even though that's my father, I'm not fighting any battles he's going into because I don't like my chances. And in that, the end result of chaos in our lives, we not only hurt ourselves, we take our family down with us. Sometimes I ride in these streets. I've been doing this for a while. Thousands and thousands of people I've counseled over the years. You know what's the killer? You know what hurts you the most? Because of the chaos in men's lives, their children pay the bills. And their children didn't ask to be brought into this world. But chaos affects the next generation just like the blessing of God affects the next generation. So there you have it. King Saul, the king of chaos, the king of spiritual, emotional, psychological chaos. Not thankful, no sense of the big picture, not caring what God thinks. He cares what people think. If he were going to church in our day, he would care more not about what his heart looked when he came into the building to worship God. He would care about what clothes he had on, whether it was like together, so that people would say, man, that guy looks good, GQ. That guy really looks good today. I like the way he wears his clothes. Now, that's the way he lived. What people think, not what God thinks. And on it goes until you end up going to a witch who you previously had banned from the land. And isn't that true about a lot of us? We end up doing things that we preached against and warned other people against.
1, 2, 3. Yes.
And then finally, and I know none of you here want this to happen, but it's the result of chaos. You take your own family down. You hurt your family. You hurt your children because of the chaos that's in your own life. Gentlemen, today, God is going to take you out of any chaos that's in your life. Do I get a hand clap here? God bless you. Thank you.